Hello everybody and welcome back once again for another video of DIY investing. Back in December of 2019, right at the new year, we actually had Litecoin leading the entire cryptocurrency market. This was at a time where Bitcoin was worth less than $3,500, and in the course of about 6 months, we saw Bitcoin go from $3,500 all the way upwards of 14K. But the thing that was very interesting that not a lot of people are talking about was the fact that Litecoin was actually leading the market in that time. Even though Bitcoin's rally went a little bit higher than Litecoin, Litecoin would have got you a bigger percent return. And not only that, but even in this short-term bear market consolidation that we're experiencing, Litecoin has continued to lead Bitcoin. What does this mean? Could Litecoin be the next big altcoin for this next bull run? Or are we about to see a flippening take place? I'm going to be covering all of these things in today's video, so stay tuned for more. With all that being said, guys, I wanted to keep you updated on what to expect with my channel moving forward. My uploading schedule is going to be Monday through Friday. I'm going to upload a video every single day of the week, and then on weekends is actually going to be my time for rest so that you guys know exactly what to expect. Expect quality content every single day, 5 days a week, so that we're all actually on the same page together. If you're new and just finding this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and then click the notification bell so you don't miss any updates like the one provided for you here. If you guys are looking for my course or looking to copy my own signals and investment advice, make sure you guys click the invitation link in the description of this video, and there you're going to get access to my Discord server. You guys can reach out to me on Discord, you can reach out to me on email, or if you click in the description of this video, you're also going to find all of my other social media handles. So make sure you guys get access to me through there. I have a number of different platforms where you guys can all talk to me and engage from. With all that being said, let's jump right in the video today. Alright guys, so here we are taking a look at Litecoin on the dollar. Now if you guys hear any background noises, people talking, kids screaming, I'm recording at my friend's house, so it's a little bit chaotic currently. But just so you guys know, it's not an audio issue, I just have a lot of people kind of talking downstairs below me. For today's video, I want to dive in and talk to you guys about Litecoin because Litecoin has been a leading indicator in this entire bull run. I mean, Bitcoin, if we go take a look at Bitcoin, we can see that Bitcoin really didn't break out until about this point right here. This was where we got the major break of the downtrend, and if I throw it to a log scale, you guys will kind of know what I'm talking about. We had this major descending resistance. No matter what way you really drew it, whether you drew it this way, this candle was really the one that broke out of that, and that took place around the 1st of April. Right at the start of that springtime event, and then we went all the way upwards of 14K. Now, the thing about this, guys, is the fact that Litecoin, at the same time, April 1st, had already impulsed quite significantly. In fact, Litecoin was already over here. And the time Bitcoin took to make this candle down here and break from its descending resistance, Litecoin was already leading the market in this initial rally up. And so I think that this is really, really important, and we all need to be keeping a close eye on Litecoin. Now, not only has Litecoin been leading the market, but we also had a major significant fundamental event that just took place inside of this market. Now, about right here, we had the halvening. I don't remember exactly where, but I'm pretty sure it was at this point here. We had the Litecoin halvening. Now, for you guys that do not know, a halvening is when the mining reward gets cut in half. Every 4 years, these coins do this. Now, not all of them are on a 4-year cycle, but Bitcoin is on a 4-year cycle. And we can see by Bitcoin's price that every single time we have a major halvening event, Bitcoin's price skyrockets, and it creates this big supply shock, and it really drives the demand inside of Bitcoin. Now, a lot of people will make the argument that halvenings are actually priced in. I have to firmly disagree with that statement. I think that the halvenings are a key fundamental principle for new price discovery inside of Bitcoin, and it's really what keeps driving these parabolic runs. And so, Litecoin just had its first halvening ever, which took place in the summer of 2019, or roughly about right here. Now, something that I think happened with Litecoin was the fact that we rallied really hard right before the halvening, and then shortly after the halvening, we actually started to sell off, and we've sold off quite significantly from that point. I mean, if we take a trading plan tool, we can see that we're down about 61% from the initial halvening inside of this market. And so I think that what happened was a simple analogy of buy the rumor, sell the news. And we can actually see this play out inside of Bitcoin. I mean, back in 2016, I bought my first Bitcoin right before that halvening. And what happened was Right before the halving, we had a big impulse. Bitcoin went from about $400 all the way up to just under $800. And then shortly after the halving, we actually started selling off quite significantly. And so I think that we're going to be experiencing roughly the same thing. I mean, dumb money, retail investors inside of the market are just going to expect prices to immediately skyrocket after the halving because they hear so much bullish talk about it. But when in actuality, what happens is people, smart money, is actually accumulating pre-halving, and then after the halving or shortly before the halving, they're taking profits, right? And so we've sold off significantly. I think that everybody's writing off Litecoin. I know a lot of people don't believe in Litecoin, but for me personally, I think that you can't really go wrong investing in Litecoin. It's been one of the top 10 market coin altcoins ever since it's been around. It's one of the few top performing altcoins in the span of the bear markets. It's survived 2 bear markets at this point. Now, unless you think that Litecoin's dead at this point, which I highly disagree, I actually expect this thing to perform very well in this next cycle. Now, for me personally, I have a lot more faith in the high market cap coins, the ones that have been around for a long time, because these are the ones that have proven themselves in the wake of the bear market. And so with that being said, I think that these older coins are going to be the first ones to experience real adoption from institutional investors heading into this next cycle. And so that's why I've actually structured my personal trading plan and portfolio much heavily invested into these bigger market cap coins. Because at the end of the day, I'm looking at this next Bitcoin cycle as one where we experience for the first time ever real institutional adoption taking place. And when that actually happens, I'm firmly expecting that these older coins are going to be the first ones to get adoption. Now, the way that the cycles have worked up to this point, Bitcoin will make its rally, the high cap coins will follow charge. Now, once Bitcoin tops out, the money leaves Bitcoin and trickles into the altcoins. High caps are the first to get the new volume, and then once the high caps make their move and start to retrace, that money exits the high caps and goes into the mid caps. Repeat cycle. Mid caps go up and they rally. Once the mid caps start to retrace, that's when the low caps start to get their money. And so this is the way that the cycle works. Now, I'm actually expecting this cycle to continue to play out. And so I'm expecting that once we see real institutional adoption take place, it's going to enter these high caps first. Now, I have no idea what coins are going to be adopted institutionally. There very easily could be some under the radar coins with less than 10 million in market cap that get institutional adoption involvement in this next cycle. But for what I can see from a charting perspective, it's a much less risky bet to actually go with these high caps. Now, for today's video, we're going to be diving in and I'm going to be sharing with you guys the Wall Street cheat sheet, which is this amazing graph right here, and we're going to be applying it to Litecoin's graph. Now, I think that the majority of the market is following this Wall Street cheat sheet. Now, some of them look different than others, but the high caps are following this very closely. Now, Litecoin was one of the most bullish coins in this bear market. Now, what we saw, if we pull up our fibs, from the high to the low, we saw an impulse that took us just under this 382 level. Now, the majority of altcoins, the high caps, they went just below this 236 level right here before they started selling off. Now, to me, I think that there was a lot more hype inside of Litecoin because of the simple fact that the halving, everybody had that on their mind. I know that there was a lot of really good analysts that were talking about this halving inside of Litecoin, and they started buying significant portions down in here. Now, I think that that very easily could have been a big reason why we saw such a stronger impulse out of Litecoin compared to the rest of the market. But the thing that is really surprising me is the fact that even after this halving event, Litecoin is still leading Bitcoin. Now, I don't know, I'm not going to pull up an exact chart because it's going to take too long to do so, but during these retraces, Litecoin fails support and actually starts dropping lower right before Bitcoin. And so what that tells me is that Litecoin is still leading the impulses. Now, I have no idea how long this pattern is going to continue to play out, but because this is a pattern that I'm watching for, I have a lot of bull bias heading towards this next cycle for Litecoin. Now, not only that, but from a market cycle perspective, this is one of the highest symmetrical market cycles out of the entire altcoin market. This is one of the better looking market cycles that you're going to find out of all the cryptos. We had a pretty strong sell-off, but the fact that we got such a nice buyback from these December lows leads me to believe that this is a very bullish project moving forward. And so for me personally, I'm a big time bull in Litecoin. Now, let's actually dive into the Wall Street cheat sheet and let's start analyzing kind of the emotional psychology that we're experiencing inside of Litecoin. Now, we're going to go through here and we're going to kind of analyze the emotions of the Wall Street cheat sheet, and we're going to apply them to Litecoin's price to kind of give us an understanding of where exactly we are in this cycle. Now, for you guys that never seen this, this is probably one of the best graphics that you're ever going to be able to use inside of crypto. Once I started learning the emotional psychology of a market cycle, it really gave me a strategic advantage over the rest of the market, and I was able to actually trade this for immense profits back in 2016 and 2017. And so this is something that I think that every beginner trader and analyst really should keep on their watch list. I mean, you don't have to know technical analysis, you don't have to be super proficient to spot this one universal pattern, because this is a chart pattern that exists everywhere. If you go and take a look at most of the high cap coins, they're going to be following roughly this same sort of trajectory with the market cycle. And so let's actually go through and analyze it with Litecoin, because I think that Litecoin is one of the most symmetrical market cycles out there. Now, the way that this starts is we have this disbelief phase. Now, the disbelief phase is really that first impulse out of our bear market, and we can see it right here. Disbelief. This is a sucker's rally. We can see that we just had a major bull cycle, and then we fully retrace, and then that first bullish cycle back up is what is known as disbelief. And so disbelief is really that first impulse right before we have another major uptrend that ensues, right? And so if we go back here, let's actually apply it to how it goes with Litecoin. Now, to do this consistently, we have to go back to the last bear cycle inside of Litecoin. We can see that this was the blow off top inside of Bitcoin that took us all the way up to about $1,150. And the high cap coins that were around at that time actually followed Bitcoin quite nicely. And Litecoin was one of those. We had a very massive market cycle. I mean, from the lows to the high was about almost a 30x move. And so that was a very big profitable market cycle. Now, what followed was a very deadly, and I add the emphasis to deadly, this was a very deadly retrace in this bear market. We fully retraced. In fact, we actually failed support, went to new lows, and that was really one of the worst bear cycles out of all of the high caps. Now, what happened shortly after we fell to new lows was our first impulse. We had a breakout in volume that came in right here, and that's really where we started trending up in that cycle. And so this leads us to the Wall Street cheat sheet, and this would actually be our disbelief phase. Remember, guys, in the Wall Street cheat sheet, you have the big bullish cycle, and then you start to sell off. And then once you fully retrace, or at least finish the bottom of the cycle, they don't all have to fully retrace. But that takes us to the disbelief phase, or right here. This is that first impulse that happens at the bottom of the bear cycle. And it's the same here. Out of these lows that we see, we make our first leg up, and that's the disbelief phase. And we can see that this is exactly what happened here. And so let's label this as our first zone. So this is disbelief. This is where the market really isn't expecting any upside. Everybody's written this coin is dead. It's never going to pump again. And that's actually the best time to be buying. You want to buy when the market is the most fearful. And so this takes us into the next paradigm of this move. So after disbelief, we go into what is known as hope. So disbelief's the first leg up, and then you have hope. Now, this is where people start to actually take note of Litecoin or whatever cryptocurrency. This is the emotional psychology where the retail investor is starting to pay attention to crypto. They're starting to say, okay, this thing just had a very massive impulse. I think that this is actually possible to continue to go up in this trend. And so hope, a recovery is possible. And we can see kind of how we develop this short-term uptrend. And it's kind of what leads us right before that big parabolic run. And so hope. Let's go take a look and see kind of how it plays together here. Now, it's really interesting to me because we see roughly the same sort of market symmetry. We have a very big impulse out of the disbelief phase, and then notice how we just kind of trend on this trend line. And this is really where we're building momentum before the major parabolic push up. And if we go and take a look at the Wall Street cheat sheet, we're going to see roughly the same sort of accumulation that took place. We can see here that we trended on this trend line right before we had a major impulse back up. And so this is the same thing that we're starting to see here inside of Litecoin now. And so this would be the hope. This is where people are actually starting to believe in this coin. They're starting to actually see that it has potential to continue to go up in this cycle. And this is where this is really where you start to see involvement taking place with dumb money. This is where they're actually looking to potentially make an entry inside of the market, but it's not necessarily where they enter, because you got to remember, guys, retail is always FOMOing in at the top. That's where most of the parabolic run comes from, is from dumb money FOMOing in after smart money accumulated the dip, right? Because that's what really starts the momentum, is smart money accumulating when everything's cheap. We make our first impulse out of that, which is the hope phase. And that's really where you start to see retail investors start to take notice of the market. Now, this takes us into the next phase, which is optimism. Now, optimism is actually where the parabolic trend starts, and this is where smart money starts entering the market. This is where they actually have faith inside of this trend continuing to play out. That's why this one says this rally is real. And so if we take a look here, we can see that we basically went parabolic at this point here. We finally leave off of this trend line, and then that's when we start the next impulse up. So this would be what is known as optimism. So we'll label that one right here. Now, if we drop it back to the Wall Street cheat sheet, this is where we start to go into the very parabolic advance inside of this market. This is where retail money is just FOMOing in, buying as much as they can. This takes us to belief, time to get fully invested. Now, the way it kind of works is the disbelief phase is where smart money accumulates the dip. Then you have the first impulse and breakout, which takes us to hope. Hope is where dumb money and the retail investors actually start to keep an eye on the crypto markets or whatever market it is for that reason. And this is where they start to actually pay attention. Now, they don't actually start accumulating positions until we break out and go parabolic. And that takes us to optimism. This rally is real. They might take small positions in this time. To retail investors, this still seems a little bit risky, and so they don't fully trust it, right? And that takes us to belief. Now, after optimism, we've started to actually start going parabolic. And now once we've started to really trend upwards in this parabolic move, that's when they start to fully believe in this. They see prices just skyrocketing up. They get really, really excited about everything. They see all of these other people, all of these influencers on Twitter, on YouTube, start talking about how much money they're making off of this. And they just feel left out. And so this is where they start to really take positions. And that's why it's called time to fully get invested. And so that takes us to belief. Now, belief is a little bit higher above optimism. And so this is where the market really starts to FOMO. And we can see here that that was the case. After belief is when really the dumb money starts accumulating a bunch of positions. And that's why we start to see major green daily, well, these are actually 3-day candles, but that's when we see major impulsive candles start to take place. Now, this takes us to thrill. Thrill is when all of their positions are in profit. They've accumulated little positions back down in optimism. They've taken bigger positions inside of belief when they got fully invested. And now thrill is really where they start to get greedy. They see everybody making money. They are making money themselves. And so this is where they start to actually margin trade. And they start to throw these big margin positions. They start to see this 10x, 50x, 100x leverage. And they start calculating these percentages thinking, oh my God, if I invested $1,000 now at 50x leverage, I would make this much money if it only went up 20%. And so they start to get really greedy and start to over leverage themselves in this time. And that's what's known as thrill. And we can see just how closely Litecoin actually follows this cycle. So then we have thrill, label that up here. And now this really is what takes us into that last part of the market cycle, the Wall Street cheat sheet, and that's called euphoria. I am a genius. We're all going to be rich. This is where their margin positions are in profit. This is where their positions from optimism in profit, belief in profit, and thrill. All of these are all in profit. They're making so much money. Everybody's making money around them. They see all of the influencers talking about why this is the future, why this is the best coin that ever existed, and why it's going to flip Bitcoin. And this is just pure euphoria. Now, at this time, you're also seeing a lot of traction inside of mainstream news. This is the way that the cycle works. Anytime you start to have a lot of news involvement talking about an asset and saying really bullish things about it, such as, will this asset flip Bitcoin, and people are actually saying that it will, those are the early signs that you actually want to be taking profits. But remember, guys, we're looking at the emotional psychology of an average retail investor. And so the average retail investor doesn't follow that cycle. The average retail investor is going to be losing 90% of the time, because 90% of the market fails. Only 10% will profit. And so dumb money is actually on that losing end because they're stuck buying when the market's going up when they should have been accumulating down in here, right? So this takes us to the final stage, which is euphoria. This is the very top of the market. Everybody around them is making immense profits. They took profits after it started going parabolic. They started to get really invested at belief. thrill, they started taking margin positions, and then euphoria, everything that they buy is going up. This is really what 2017 was like. Right at the end of 2017, I remember you could literally buy anything on any exchange, and you could almost guarantee that it would rally at least 50%. It was like shooting fish in the barrel. It was one of the most fun times to be a trader and an analyst back then, because it didn't matter what you bought. I remember there were so many ICOs that were going absolutely crazy. There would be all of these dumb little news events that would come out. A mainnet would release and the coin would do a 10x overnight. And so this was a really exciting time for crypto back in 2017. And crypto being such a volatile market, it really does follow the Wall Street cheat sheet so identically. And so that's why I can't stress it enough. You guys should really keep this chart on you at all times, whether you keep it on your phone, whether you keep it on your laptop. I always look at this because it really helps me to analyze my own emotions, as well as kind of see what the rest of the market is doing. Now, this is actually what starts the bearish trend back down. Now, the bearish trend is one in crypto that's very, very volatile. I mean, the bull trend are very volatile, but the bear trend, if you don't know what you're doing inside of cryptocurrency, you're going to get wrecked, and that's just the way it works. Now, unfortunately, 90% of the market loses, and so these are the emotions that the average retail investor feels. Now, if you were somebody that actually got into the market back in 2017 and you saw all of your investments crashing around you, this is something to really take note of, because how you feel right now can really show you how the emotional psychology plays out. And so if you're somebody that was buying a lot during this point here inside of 2017, you were FOMOing in a lot, you were hearing it on the news, you were hearing your friends talk about it, and you ended up buying when everything was really expensive. After the market actually started retracing back down, how do you feel in that time? Did you guys sell when things were at a very low point? After it crashed 80 to 90%, or are you still here holding? I would hope you guys are still holding. And if you're somebody that's feeling a lot of these lower emotions like depression, anger, panic, all of these things, if you're feeling these sort of emotions, you got to understand that this is the peak point of financial opportunity. And this is the way that the market cycle works. We kind of behave in these waves, and this is, I can even throw it back way back in here and we can see kind of how it works. We have these big parabolic runs, we fall all the way back down, we crash, and then the market makes another bigger impulse. And that's the way that these work. We go up and down, and we just continue on going higher and higher in this trend. And so if you're feeling a lot of negative emotions right now, now is the time where you want to be buying, and you really shouldn't be selling any of your positions. If you FOMO'd in at the top, there's no point in selling after it's already gone down so much, because the downside risk is far more insignificant than the upside potential at this point. And so you guys got to keep that in mind. Now, this takes us into the bearish side of the Wall Street cheat sheet. This is complacency. This is where we make our first lower high before we actually start the bear retrace back down. Now, at this point, smart money's already taken profits. They were selling this entire way up, taking profits, scaling out of their positions. But dumb money, the 90% of retail investors, they see this lower high and they actually expect it to kind of just go back up again and continue on in that uptrend. Only this is the first part of the bear market. Complacency, this is the way that they feel. We just need to cool off for the next rally. So they're actually expecting to see more upside. Only what happens is we start to crash. And so we will label these ones red because this is the bearish aspect of things. Let's actually make them a little bit smaller. So this is the first lower high that we saw, and it's exactly the same inside of Litecoin. Lower high, and that's complacency. Now, the cool thing about crypto and why I want you guys all to follow this Wall Street cheat sheet is because of the fact crypto likes to follow these emotional psychology cycles so closely. Now, crypto is a very undervalued asset. There's a lot of retail investors investing in this market. And so because of that, you're going to see very impulsive, very emotional market cycles. And you're going to be able to pinpoint exactly where we are in these cycles. So this takes us to complacency. This is really that first lower high in the bear cycle before we start to really crash. Now, I'm not going to go through and analyze all of these. We'll kind of just talk about it from here. After we start to crash and sell off even further, they start to get anxious. Why am I getting margin calls? This dip is taking longer than I expected. Now, for you guys that don't know what a margin call is where you can't pay back the initial loan needed to cover your long position inside of the market. And so if you can't cover back your long position and you don't have enough collateral to pay back the loans, or the lenders, I should say, then this is actually where your entire account gets liquidated and they have to just close your account. You lose all of your money and all of that money goes to the creditors or the lenders at that point. And so remember guys, in Thrill, this is where they're actually taking margin positions because they've taken positions in optimism, they fully invested themselves at belief, and now once they're in profit in all of those two trends, that's when they start to take margin positions. And so the dumb money at this point here, they're already lower than when they were accumulating their margin positions up there, right? And so this is why they start to get margin called. All of those margin positions they took up here are now at a major loss because we're coming crashing back down on the downside. And so they start to get really scared about that. Now we continue to crash, and then this is where the emotional psychology starts to play tricks on your mind. This is what's known as denial. My investments are with great companies, they will come back. This is where you start to convince yourself that even though you're down 50 to 60% already, you start to convince yourself that it won't go any lower. You start to tell yourself that, oh, this is the best project. This is what all my friends told me. This is what they were saying on the news. It has to be true. Only what happens is we continue to crash. Now, this is what takes us to panic. After we start to really crash back down, we start to get back down to those low significant levels before the initial rally back up. This is where they start to see everybody else selling, the market's crashing around them, they don't know what to do, and then this is what leads us into that next phase in the market cycle, which is capitulation. This is where they sell all of their investments, and to be quite honest, you'll hear people give different points of view on this. I mean, I personally look at capitulation as the first real crash, and so this would have been our first crash right here. We made our first lower high, and then we go all the way back down, almost to this optimism to hope phase, right? And so that's actually where I consider capitulation taking place. A lot of people will tell you that capitulation takes place at the very bottom, only I kind of disagree because I think that the average retail investor is really selling the majority of their positions after the first major crash because that's when it's the most fearful. We just made this big parabolic run, and then after this immediate crash all the way back down, we erase all of that major move. And so that's the majority of where dumb money actually sells. I'd say at least about 70% of retail investors sell at the bottom of the first crash. And so this takes us to capitulation. Now, next comes anger. This is where the market continues to trend lower. Who shorted the market? Why did the government allow this to happen? This is where you start to see a lot of people kind of pointing fingers. They start to really talk down on any analyst. They just get really angry. This is something that we saw inside of the bear market, actually. A lot of analysis, a lot of top influencers on Twitter started getting a lot of hate comments inside of their Twitter posts, and this was a really crazy time. This is kind of what I would consider around the bear market at 6K. There was a lot of angry people. Now, you could also make the argument that after we sold support and actually started going to about 3,200, we saw a lot of anger, but I think the majority of anger took place actually at that 6K support floor. And so where that would take place, notice the symmetry here. We make a capitulation right here. This is kind of the first bounce. We get rejected here. And then we come back down, retest that, and we kind of make this little double bottom formation before we sell off into one more new leg down, right? Now look how close this is to Litecoin. We make our first lower high, crash back down, capitulation, and then we have anger right here. Everybody's super mad, and we can see roughly the same symmetry here. We get a failed rejection. We get a failed attempt to break lower, we bounce up higher, get rejected, we make another attempt to break this support, we hold support there, and then we get rejected here, and this is what takes us into that final sell-off, right? Now, it's almost the exact same of what we saw on the Wall Street cheat sheet. It's almost exactly the same, and that's why I think that everybody needs to follow this, is because you can find this pattern on virtually every chart. You can find it on shorter time frames as well. A lot of undervalued coins will follow these same market cycles, and if you know how to spot them, you can actually set yourself up for very cheap entries, and you can make a lot of money in the process. And so if we take a look at the Wall Street cheat sheet, the last one on the list is actually depression. This is where everybody's investments have gone to basically nothing. All the people that were FOMOing in at the top have already sold all their positions down in here. Depression, they continue to see the market drop lower and lower. They just think that everything is dead. There's no surviving it. And this is actually where smart money comes and accumulates the dip. Now, if we take a look here, this little graph right here is actually a very key indication of how to actually profit. Now, smart or dumb money is actually buying right here. This is the peak point of maximum financial risk because everything's expensive. We have this major rally up, and this is where dumb money is actually accumulating, because this is when the market's going up. They see all of these people talking about it. They see it on the news, and so they think that that's the best time to buy, is when everybody's talking about it. Only that's when everything is about to crash. And so you got to be willing to accumulate everybody else's fear. And that's the biggest rule that I can teach you in today's video, is be willing to accumulate everybody else's fear. During the times of the most fear is the time where you will make the most life-changing money for yourself. Take a look at the 2008 financial crisis. There was so much fear in the economy. Everybody was losing their jobs. Everybody was making less money than before. Everybody thought that the entire government was going to implode. And because of that, stock prices went down. Oil prices, commodities kind of went up a little bit for one more leg up, but that's to be expected during times of fear. But then real estate went really cheap, and if you would have been accumulating when everybody was the most fearful, and you would have been taking profits about right now, selling all of your real estate that you accumulated, selling all of your cheap stocks that you accumulated, you would have been a millionaire, all from just accumulating all of that fear. And so this is what takes us to the next point. This is the point of maximum financial opportunity. It's roughly the very bottom of the cycle. This is when everybody's the most fearful. When everybody's the most fearful, it's the cheapest point to buy before we start a brand new uptrend like we did here. And so this is really what takes us to Litecoin today. We can see here that we went for one more low. We had a very massive crash all the way back down. And so this is what is known as depression. This is where nobody wants to touch the market. It's the most fearful, but this is also the peak point of financial opportunity. You want to be accumulating when everybody's the most fearful. And I mean, Litecoin crashed probably 93% from the all-time high. Yeah, almost 94%, about 94% from the all-time high to the low of that cycle. And this is where you would have wanted to be accumulating. But the thing about it, guys, is 90% of the market loses. Out of the 100% of people that invest and trade in a financial market, only 10% of those will ever earn a profitable return. And so dumb money in this time is way too scared to even touch this stuff. But this is where you want to actually be accumulating your investments. And this is actually what takes us into the new paradigm. Now, if we come down here, we can see that after depression, we make our first bullish move back up, and this takes us back into this disbelief phase, or roughly the same as what we saw back here. Remember, guys, if we go throw it back to the disbelief phase back in the day, we're going to see roughly the exact same thing playing out. We had a massive parabolic run, we go through all of the negative emotions, we make a big crash, and then we start our first impulse back up, and this is the disbelief phase, right? Now, remember, in the last cycle, right after that disbelief phase, we had a massive parabolic event that took place. A huge uptrend, and you would have made a lot of money if you would have just accumulated based off of the Wall Street cheat sheet. And so this is what actually takes us to the current day valuations. We had depression, we make that first impulse back up, and now we have, once again, a new disbelief phase. And so this is why I wanted to make this video, is the simple fact that the markets are following this Wall Street cheat sheet very closely. And even though we had a big market crash and a lot of people are scared right now, they're expecting Bitcoin to just kind of fall off the earth, these altcoins are setting up for the peak point of my financial opportunity, this disbelief phase. We're basically right here. And you could make the argument that we're about like right here, somewhere in the very beginning of this uptrend. And so this is where you want to be buying. And this is right before we have another major impulse back up. We go to new all-time highs. We make a new bull run. And the thing about it, guys, is 90% of the market is too scared to be buying in this time. If you're watching this video, chances are you've bought and FOMO'd in a lot in 2017. Or if you did that, you're still accumulating down here. Maybe you were a little bit smarter. Maybe you got in back in 2016. And so you've actually accumulated this dip a lot like I have. And this is really what's going to take our financial careers to that next level. The fact that we're willing and able to buy while everything is cheap is what's going to set us up above and beyond the rest of the market. Because you guys got to remember, if this is actually the real institutional adoption phase where we start to see real institutional money taking place, this has the potential to be the biggest market cycle inside of cryptocurrency that we've ever seen. And so the people that are accumulating right now while everything is the most fearful are the ones set to make the biggest financial return for themselves. And so this is the video I had for you guys. overall, we're seeing one of the best market cycles playing out inside of Litecoin. Now, the cool thing that I like about this is the fact, look how much volume came in from this initial leg up. If that isn't clear indication that this trend is very much early and is going to continue to impulse, I don't know what will. I mean, we have significantly more volume than even the very top of the cycle high when Litecoin was worth just under 400 bucks. And so the fact that you can buy Litecoin for $50 right now is a steal. I cannot stress that enough. I'm buying everything that I can. Any extra money that I get, I'm just throwing it into cryptocurrency right now because we are literally right here in the scheme of things. That first impulse before we go into the new cycle and we break all-time highs and we have another major parabolic run. And it's the same thing with Bitcoin, same thing with Ethereum, it's the same thing with Monero. All of these altcoins are doing this. But the reason I want to talk to you guys about Litecoin today is because we have a few major things that have come out. We have the halvening that took place here. On top of that, we have the fact that it's leading the market. We led the bull run up from the December lows. We led Bitcoin. Even when we topped out here, it was actually before Bitcoin topped out. And so Litecoin would have been your leading indicator to know exactly when to take profits, when to reaccumulate and buy the dip. And so the fact is, guys, we could still technically sell off a little lower, but the fact is we've already sold off so much from that initial rally up, about 75%. From the top of that cycle down to the low. I'm not expecting more downside to really take place. In fact, I think that it's less likely that we're going to see more continued downside. The upside potential is far greater than the downside risk. And so I wanted to make this video to talk about these things. I don't think you can go wrong accumulating Litecoin, Ethereum, XMR, XRP, these older coins that have been around a long time, these are the safest bets for this new cycle. And so I think that it's very important that we all take time to at least accumulate small bags of them, because I remember watching how parabolic these things got. I mean, if we throw it to a bigger time frame before we finish up this video, let's kind of take a look and see what we could expect with Litecoin. Now, from an Elliott wave perspective, I like to trade Elliott waves to map out where we are in the cycles. This was a simple 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Elliott wave impulse. And now based off of Elliott waves, markets behave in 3 sets of 3. So this was our first set of 3. And now what's coming is our 3-wave impulse, right? Now, I have no idea how high this thing is going to go. But if Bitcoin goes to my target of 200K, which that's just my target. I don't know if it's going to do that, but I do believe it will. Otherwise, I wouldn't make it my target. I believe Bitcoin's going to hit about 200K in this next cycle. I think at the bare minimum, we hit 100K. That's kind of what everybody else believes. But I also remember in the last cycle, pretty much the top analysts, I think that the highest price prediction I ever remember seeing, and it was by a very small amount of people, was about 10K BTC, and we doubled that. So I think that this one's going to be very similar. A lot of people are calling for 200K. I think we very easily could double that and hit 200K. And so I'm watching that for myself. Now, the next one in the cycle is going to be the 3-wave. Based off of Elliott wave theory, let's go take a look here. We can see here that we have 1, 3, and 5. Each set of waves has 3 smaller waves inside of it. So we just finished the 1 wave. Now, what comes next is the most parabolic wave. And this is the 3-wave impulse. The 1 wave is what starts the hype. This is where smart money accumulates their positions. The 3-wave is usually about double the size of the 1, but with cryptocurrency, they can be so big that it's hard to say exactly. I mean, if we go and take a look at Litecoin, we can see here that this is a perfect example. The 1 wave was kind of small, we had a massive 3-wave, and then the 5-wave was roughly the same size as the 1. And so that's pretty conventional with Elliott wave theory. Sometimes the 5-wave will be more impulsive than the 3, or at least the same size as the 3. And that's all something that's that's correlated inside of crypto. But I'm not sitting here trying to draw exact price targets. I'm trying to map out what we can expect from a long-term perspective. So we just finished the 1 wave. Now what comes next is the 3. I honestly have no idea how high that 3-wave is going to get, but I really would not be the least bit surprised if to see Bitcoin go to 200K. We could very easily see Litecoin at 25K, even upwards of 50K. And I think the reason for that is kind of the way that Litecoin was programmed and designed by Charlie Lee, was he wanted it to be about the equivalent of gold and silver. And so that's kind of what Litecoin is in the cryptocurrency space, is Bitcoin's like gold and Litecoin is like digital silver. And so he always wanted it to have about a 25% correlation in price. And so Litecoin would be about a quarter valued of whatever Bitcoin was. And so if Bitcoin's worth 200K, that would put Litecoin at about 50K value. And so I think that this is very possible that we can see in this next cycle. Now, I have no idea exactly, but what I can say is these assets are very undervalued in this time. A lot of people will get mad at me for making such high price targets, but you guys got to remember that nobody would have saw Litecoin valued at, just under $400 back in these early days either. And so I'm here. A lot of people call me a moon boy. A lot of people call me stupid for making these assumptions. But at the end of the day, I personally have been here to see the cycles. I know how parabolic they can get, and I am expecting this to be the case once again. Now, generally speaking, the people that are calling you stupid for making high price targets can oftentimes be retail investors that just don't know enough. Now, other times it can be bigger accounts just calling you an idiot. But I honestly think that a lot of these influencers that we follow on Twitter, a lot of these people that we follow on YouTube really aren't good analysts. And that's why I personally don't follow any other analysts out there. I stick to my own analysis and I stick to my own gut instincts to kind of help me invest inside of this market, because the more I listen to external forces, the more it complicates my trading plan. And so this is the video I had for you guys. Wanted to show you guys all my long-term perspective with Litecoin, why I believe that Litecoin is headed for a very massive cycle, and how it actually lines up very closely with the Wall Street cheat sheet. This is one of the best indicators that you can use inside of the cryptocurrency market. If you know how to analyze this, you're going to be able to see the emotional psychology in the market, as well as see it inside of yourself. How you feel personally is what matters most, because if you're starting to feel these negative emotions, it can help you to actually stay the course of the trend. It can help you to actually buy more in that time, or it can also help you just to become a better trader in general. Me knowing how to analyze my own emotions made me a stronger person, and that's why I really am thankful for cryptocurrency in the last cycle. It's because I learned so much about handling my emotions when you have a lot of money on the line and you start to see markets crashing and you're averaging into those positions and you're feeling scared. You got to understand that that's part of the game, and the only way that you get rich is if you're willing to kind of go with that risk and strategize yourself to where you're accumulating everybody else's fear. So anyways, guys, thank you all so much for the support. It really does mean a lot to me. If you found this video helpful, always remember to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to this channel for more updates. Click that notification bell so that you don't miss any more updates like the one provided for you here. I have a course and signals. The video course has 20 different educational videos of all of my personal strategies that I use for investing. The signals is a way that you guys can actually copy my investment strategy over the next couple years. All of these are lifetime memberships, so a one-time payment. So make sure you guys reach out to me for that. Anyways, guys, thank you all so much for the support. I will catch you in the next video. As always, peace out.